Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in, welcome on, welcome to another episode of the Direct Podcast. Everything you need to know about the universes you love. I'm your host, Matt Roembke, and I'm joined as always by my friend, co-host, box office correspondent, and senior editor at thedirect.com, Mr. David Thompson. David, what up?
It's all about him, Matt. Happy to be here.
That's right. Damn straight. Damn straight. It's all about him. It's all about you, but it's not all about us because we are joined today by a very special guest completing our Phase Hero Infinity Gauntlet. You know him, you love him, Mr. Aaron Perine. Aaron, what up?
What's going on, y'all? Man, oh man, I'm laughing. You guys are the second podcast to like finish the Phase Hero Grand Slam in a week, so
Yeah.
I'm happy to have contributed to bring a little bit of spicy nugget magic to this proceedings. Thank you.
We need y'all as many places as we could possibly get you. You know what I mean? Some of the best brains in the business, one of the best smiles in the business here with Aaron. We're very excited. Aaron, a new thing I'm going to start here, and David doesn't even know. I'm stealing it from one of my favorite podcasts, Normal Gossip. I have just a question for you before we dive into here. What is your relationship with Daredevil and now Daredevil Born Again?
Man, okay, so I guess the first season I was a much younger person. I think it was during was it in grad school? No, yeah, I guess so. Grad school in
Way
Cleveland.
back.
Running Netflix on the Wii application on
There you go.
Wow.
mom's house back in Cleveland. Watching it that way, and I can tell you right now, the quality that we're living in right now is a little bit better, probably, than streaming it in what 720, probably, maybe 1080,
Know
maybe.
where we're at.
It's like a long time ago. Just to give you an idea, like, dang, it's been a long time. This show has been out for a minute. And I really enjoyed season one. Season two is crazy, and then season three kind of dropped off a little bit as I was trying to like, make my way professionally. But yeah, watching those episodes and being like, because people would just talk about like, man, you got to see Daredevil. There's this part, there's this hallway thing. You have to see it. And this is like pre-full social media eating the world, so the clips weren't as easily accessible, I
Right.
suppose. But then you see, you're like, oh wow, wow, holy crap, this is nuts. And I mean, we're a Law and Order Criminal Intent household when I was growing up. So Vincent, we knew he had the goods beforehand, and then his
Yeah.
performance is really like tremendous too. So yeah, that's probably where I get a lot of my start with the show is like way back then. And of
One of my
course,
favorite. Go ahead.
being Adam Barnhart's basically cubicle mate over at comic book back during
Yeah.
the previous era and just hearing all the same Daredevil stuff secondhand from him and being like, I hope it works out for you, buddy. I hope this all works out. And then seeing it actually come to
Yeah.
fruition, hysterical.
It's amazing. I think about Adam a lot when I watch this show because like those people fought every day for years. Years. Like I did comicbook.com spaces like 3 or 4 times, and Adam brought up Daredevil every single time. Like every single time without fail. And it's now granted, it's because it was WandaVision and I was talking about how it's like the best comic book show ever, and he, told me to slow my roll a little bit. And but this show is just it's so long standing, and now it's reinvented itself, and now we are here to talk about episode 4, Sig Semper Systems. Sig Semper Systems. That's
System
right.
up, I
Yeah.
guess.
Ooh, rah. It was a hell of an episode. Lots to dive into, but first let's get into your starting lineup for Daredevil Born Again, episode 4. Charlie Cox is Matt Murdock, Vincent D'Onofrio is Wilson Fisk, Elliot Zarir is Vanessa Fisk, Margarita Levieta as Heather Glenn, Nikki M. James as Chris McDuffie, Genia Walton as BB Ulrich, Artsy Froshan as Buck Cashman, still my favorite name in the show, Michael Gandolfini as Daniel Blake, and John Bernthal back as Frank fucking Castle. Daredevil, Born Again, episode 4. First down, overall thoughts. Aaron, I'm going to start with you. What are your overall thoughts on this week's Daredevil, Born Again?
It's like very funny to like see what this show is, I guess, like how it might have gone or what maybe people had perceived it was going to be and what has actually transpired through 4 episodes. I really enjoyed of course seeing Bernthal back. I've always thought he's kind of underrated. Just as a performer in general. My man
Yeah.
really had the goods. Like I was joking around like he got a lot of range for someone who you basically look at and you're like, oh look, it's the Punisher. Like this thing, King Richard, American Gigolo. Heck, he's in what's that movie with Affleck here in a second, where there's
The
some people
Accountant too.
count two is going to be hysterical. They're very,
Yes, it is.
he's got a lot of range, so that's cool. I think it's interesting because when you think lawyer show, I guess none of us really expected them to just go at structural injustice the way that maybe this show is approaching it, and I commend them for that. It's very funny to have this be the show where Disney says, "All right, these truck decals, this gotta stop.
It's gotta go.
Uh, got it. We gotta slow our roll on this." Which is also weirdly kind of stealth marketing too, because it's just going to generate a ton of conversation.
Sure is.
Yeah, But interesting to be back in the world. Wilson Fisk continues to just kind of vibe through life and still come out on top somehow, except for in that therapy room, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
I really would love. I don't know. I, the ending of all of this, like we're on the full tracks towards your season finale now. It feels like the first three episodes are really setting up like, okay, this is what this version or this iteration of Daredevil feels like, and now we're hustling and flowing now. Yeah.
The page has turned, the fold has been unfolded. David Thompson, episode 4. Where are you at?
And the fact that next week it's episodes 5 and 6. We get a double
Jesus.
up next week. It's really moving, which is going to be fascinating to see why they're doing that. I can't wait. I loved this episode. Just like quickly overall thoughts. I feel like this episode may have had like the most going on at the same time between different characters. Like last week, I remember coming on here being like, "Man, I hope we get more Fisk," and sure did we. Right? I think everything. Seeing Vincent D'Onofrio with Heather in the therapy room, that I've never seen him more uncomfortable in my entire life.
Makes
Like
me
that
anxious.
Wilson Fisk just like doing therapy is like such a great concept that I'm so happy they like went for, because in every other situation, even when the whole like garbage, newspaper thing runs and he sees that, that's still him. He like likes getting pissed. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
part of him's like, oh, great, an excuse to be mad.
Yeah, a
Like
good one.
let me go like chop, you know, really like kind of like pound my feet and stomp up here and yell and tell everyone to leave the room. Like that's fun. But him in therapy is so uncomfortable, and I feel like that was an aspect that was literally I don't think ever shown in the Netflix series, which I've been really enjoying. Overall, though, really great episode. I think it was a great pace for Matt Murdock, the lawyer's journey, and then how Frank Castle's reintroduction kind of sends him on this now seemingly arc to get back as Daredevil. I thought that was actually spaced out and paced out really nicely. Matt, what did you think?
Yeah, I think I echo a lot of the sentiments you guys have already said. Real quick on Vincent D'Onofrio and Wilson Fisk. Aaron, you said he's kind of failing up, and also the therapy stuff, very Tony Soprano, kind
Yeah.
of the therapy within the bad guy thing. Is Wilson Fisk just the penguin with a plan? Like, just failing up and doing the Sopranos thing? Like, out of
Brandon made the
nowhere.
joke last week on the show. He was like, "Yo, like Vic, you're a good man." Like, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "What is wrong with you? Why did you put that in my brain?"
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Vanessa. Sometimes we gotta go to therapy. We gotta figure some shit out. You know what I'm saying? And they saying I'm the garbage guy. It's tough, Vic. It's tough out here. Man, I miss that show, and I miss his voice every single day. um, Colin Farrell's just yeah. But this episode, I think the first 40 minutes, like you said, David, had so many different things going on. It felt filler-ish, and just in this, not in a negative way, but just in the
Hmm.
sense of like, okay, let's catch this up, let's catch this up, let's make sure that these seeds are
Yeah.
planted, let's introduce this person, this, that, the other. But then, of course, classic Disney Plus fashion over the last 12 months, as the episode gets to an ending, it just ramps up in such a great way. The crescendo in Disney Plus between Skeleton Crew, Agatha, and Daredevil Born Again has just been off the charts. Throw in your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in there. And it just the trend continues here as, like you said, Aaron, like this feels like the transition into the back half of the season. Very Mando-like, Mando 1, 2, and 3. It was very first half, second half.
Hmm.
And this feels a lot like what we're getting here. The Frank stuff, I think, was obviously like that's such a standout scene. And, I'm sure we'll talk more about it. I'm interested to see if that's all we get of the Frank Punisher logo stuff. I know it's not, but commentary wise. I hope that we get more of that because that's really what I wanted. Like, if you're gonna do the thing, do the damn thing. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But again, this show continues to prove me vindicated in that characters can impact a show more than any other thing. Writing, production, action, story, plot, whatever it might be. If you have great characters, you can really do anything. And they've shown that over these past 4 weeks with so many different types of episodes coming in, making this a really awesome first half of Daredevil Born Again.
By the way, I think this is the first action-free episode, if I'm not mistaken, unless you count him training on the roof for a second.
So
But
last week, was there an
I
action
mean,
scene?
when White
The
Tiger
chase scene?
died,
My tiger died. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that's
Yeah,
not really an
okay.
action
Oh,
scene,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's someone getting shot. Like it is like, you know,
Yeah, it's
I don't
gruesome.
know.
Is what it is.
Yeah.
He didn't beat up homeboy last week.
That was the week before.
Oh, the week before. It's the way
Yeah.
that it ended.
Right.
Yeah.
And they
And
showed the
then-
recap this week, and I forgot,
Okay.
dude, that guy just flies in front of that fucking train, man. That
Yeah,
was crazy. But overall, I think that this is definitely a transition episode. I definitely think it's parlaying into whatever we're about to get next week with the 2 episodes, and we'll talk more about that as well. Let's get into second down. Aaron, your biggest takeaway. What was your big moment, big thought coming out of episode 4?
Can it really be anything else? But
Well, that's why you're going first.
John Bernthal, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Can it really be anything? Like the fact that the D Plus and Marvel Studios accounts like teased it hours before the episode dropped. I mean, they know how big of a deal it is to have this actor back playing this character that everybody really loves. I mean, if you believe the reports out there, they love him so much they're gonna give him a special presentation before we even saw a second of the character on screen in the MCU. But it is interesting. Like I mean, what is it? I think when Joanna Robinson over at The Ringer talks about this, she said this to us over at Face Hero, that when you have these characters, that's what the MCU is built on. Like that's the gravy that makes the whole thing go, is the character interactions between the characters that we all know and love and have built up all this time with each other. And I guess one of the big critiques of like Phase 4 and Phase 5 have been like, yo, why haven't any of them been in the same room for longer than 5 seconds with each other? And with Daredevil, you don't gotta do that because they're all in the same universe. Like you were over in the Netflix island while we were doing the main quests over here for however long. So
Yeah.
now they're all together again. You can have John Bernthal come back, and it's not like it costs a gajillion dollars. You don't have to give the GDP of a small nation to one of the original 6 actors to come through.
Nation.
You know, it's nice to have, and you know, because we've seen some of the other stuff going on. That's not the last time we see old Frank. That's not
Yeah.
gonna be the last time we see him. So you're gonna look forward to that as well. And I even more selfishly, you look forward to like, yo, what if he ever stays in the same room with Deborah Ann Wall during this first season of the show?
I mean, come on.
Come on, you gotta give it to us, Bradley. Give it to us. You know we want it.
Give us what we need. You know what I mean? We need more of it. John Bernthal is such a presence in everything he does, and he does a lot of TV. Like I feel like his 3 biggest credits are all TV in Walking Dead, The Bear, and Daredevil. And he is just such an impact player anytime
God,
he
him and
steps
the
on
Bear.
screen.
Yeah.
And you mentioned it earlier, he's got range, but also, and I think this is kind of a movie star quality he has. He also does the John Bernthal thing really well. In The Bear and Daredevil, Walking Dead, angry as fuck, like just mad at things, right? And he just does it in such a way, and we get no ease into it at all. He's pissed off immediately. He's pissed off the entire time, and it just brings so much emotion into the room when him and Charlie Cox are doing their thing. And I've talked for 3 weeks now about how Charlie Cox has just the best chemistry with every single person on screen, maybe in all of the MCU roster. Like it's Downey-esque in that he can talk to anybody and it feels so right. But when him and John get there and Charlie Cox starts smiling at the things that John Bernthal says, they're such a bad influence on each other. And it's such an awesome thing. And they always tackle the deepest ethical issues. Like it's never a light conversation. Like, hey, how was Wednesday? Or
How
like,
it
hey,
started, man, on the
it's
rooftop. Like it went
exactly
straight to it.
it's the same combo over and over, but it feels fresh every single time. And it's just something that I none of us could wait any longer to see it, and we got it. And now the anticipation for everything John Berthal moving forward is just higher than it's ever been. And that's hard to say with like one of the most beloved characters on TV.
I think it was really cool. Like speaking of that, where in the first introduction on the rooftop, iconic Daredevil Marvel scene with Punisher and him having this back and forth dialogue of what basically makes them different, but then Punish Frank Castle saying like we're not different. This was kind of that part 2 years later, but because of Foggy's death, now Frank thinks we are on the exact same level. Like
All right.
we are the same basically. And man, when Charlie Cox, Matt Murdock starts breaking down, holy shit. Like, thank goodness they showed the Foggy death because it wouldn't have hit us. That scene would not, like, that idea of that scene wouldn't have hit us hard if Foggy had died off camera. You know, if we just kind of like knew that had happened and that's why he wasn't Daredevil, having seen the actual death and the experience of that and like hearing the heartbeat stop and everything that happened. By the way, Frank being the first one to call him Bullseye canonically in any of this. Loved that. That was so cool. But yeah, like their back and forth was incredible. I'm so happy he made the series. Um, my other big takeaway beyond that scene, that was like maybe probably the best so far of this series, I would say, kind of safely, honestly, even though there's been a lot of great scenes so far. This whole sequence of Matt being this lawyer and, you know, representing Leroy and that whole back and forth, because the scene starts and, you know, he's like, I get the blind guy. Great. You know, and it's like oh, this whole thing. We go through and he talks to, you know, what was the character he was speaking to? I'm not a big law person. Like it's
Somebody who wants to beg Matt Murdock. That's who it is. I mean, Jesus, lady,
Matt
do your job.
I
That
know
was
she
insane.
didn't give him parole.
She caved instantly.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it took nothing. It took
I
nothing.
was it was funny. I was surprised. I was surprised Matt even like tried for the parole because he was giving him such a hard time behind the scenes. Then of course it
Yeah.
comes down. It's like, he really wants parole, blah, blah, blah. But when his return back and talking to Leroy through the glass, that was an all-time scene, man. That was great. That was what this series I think is doing a great job of is showing the importance of Matt Murdock, the lawyer, and now in the future, Matt Murdock as Daredevil, as the vigilante. And I think this series, what it's done best so far between their White Tiger, trial, and then between the Leroy representation in this scene or this episode, is prove why Matt Murdock as that lawyer, as that attorney is important, you know, and there could be a change. And it talks about these big topics that aren't always talked about, like Aaron pointed out, on Disney Plus, right? Or in other series. And I love that this series can go in all sorts of places because it doesn't have it doesn't have kind of that cushy feeling that it's TV 14. It is, you know, we can it's rated R, right? We can push this however we want. We can discuss whatever we want. I thought that scene really stuck out to me and was great. And now I'm curious after it, like, okay, what does this mean for the future? Because we're getting Daredevil soon. What is that going to mean for Matt as a lawyer? Because he is doing good and he is learning, you know, and he's discovering like because it's complicated. They've already made the police officers in the area such a complicated character so far this series, like the NYPD. Like even the fact that he hears the heartbeat of the cop that he beat up and how he was telling the truth. Like that was interesting, right? Where it's like there's this interesting kind of play back and forth, and I'm curious how that part of the story pushes forward because it feels like as fans, the showrunners, it's like we're getting the helmets, right? He's practicing on the rooftop, like we're gonna get Daredevil again. But I do want to continue getting Matt Murdock, the lawyer, in the future.
Yeah, and real quick, that cop, the dirty cop who he read the heartbeat this episode, that guy's fantastic. That guy's
Yeah,
really good. Like,
well
I
cast.
love every time he's on screen. I'm kind of encapsulated by him. Like he's playing this role really well. And it shows the highs and lows, not highs and lows, but like the high profile to low profile of Matt Murdock too, because he was just very public case vigilante, all Sokovia Accord type courtroom case all the way down to this petty theft thing. And
Yeah.
it's just such a good range. And what they did is splitting that up, I thought was really interesting because at first I was kind of rooting against Leroy a little bit. Like he's being a dick. He's not cooperating at all. He's not really listening to anything Matt's saying. Even though like what Matt's saying, like by letter of law, like does make sense. And then he comes back with a win and he's still not there with it. And then they dive in deeper and they tell that story and they make an impact on, low level crime, high level punishment. And that dichotomy, not just in this show, but also in this country. I hope that they do something similar with the Punisher logo stuff. I hope that you make a statement, you take a stance, and you tell that story. Aaron, for you, how do you feel like they're handling the dirty cop situation here across Hell's Kitchen?
I mean, it's really funny. Like when as soon as they announced that this was happening, this show, and that seems like an eternity ago, man. Like my life was so different when that Disney Plus media day, that day where Kevin came out there and put all them logos on the screen. Things were a lot different in every respect.
Yeah.
But that was one of my first questions on like the immediate phase, like our podcast post. I was like, how the heck do you square the elephant in the room what this character represents in the real world? How do you do that? Like it's going to be so difficult. And I have to give it. Marvel's not perfect all the time. They do some stuff sometimes where you're like, like just like DC does some stuff sometimes where you're like, guys, I don't know about that. So for them to take this kind of like step forward, and even this is kind of impressive in certain ways, I think I'm not surprised anybody would say maybe you want to stay tuned. We got some John Bernthal rage, but like the meter is only like at like 32%. Like
Sure.
we got to get the full, and he has to start wrecking fools at some point, right? It's the only reason you hire the guy to play this role is for him to start cracking skulls. Like what? So that stuff has been really interesting, but it's been helped like such a interesting hand because I mean you're right, like the dirty cop who's hysterical every time. I'm like, he's really good because just like freaking young Russell being John Walker, that punchable face sometime like a sliver of a point where you're like, yeah, all right, fine.
Yeah.
I'm glad you have a black guy. Yeah.
Damn it.
Guy.
Yeah.
So that's sort of been interesting to watch. I can't remember who said. I mean, I'm gonna have to credit these writers on Blue Sky that say this smart stuff that I just grift for podcast fodder.
Sure.
But like,
That's the show.
yeah, right. This is all of us like, well, this is what we do.
Yeah.
I think it's Christina Lynn was talking about like, I wish that the other shows were allowed to make such broad actual statements with
Right.
the things they do. And I feel like with a character with the identity lines of this character, you are allowed to take some swings and take some stuff, and people are not going to get as mad at you about the things you say as if it's coming out of like Anthony Mackie's mouth or Brie Larson or whatever, right? It's going to be different. It happened with X-Men 97 too, where I was like, yo, what? We
Doing
can
the
do
thing.
this? Why can't we do this with some of the other projects? What happened?
Yeah.
Why is it only the X-Men and my poor tortured Catholic boy that we can say these things, but the other stuff is like, oh,
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy because like I understand like wanting more of this in other shows, but I also love how this show and X-Men 97, like the vehicle so organically works for these conversations and it just fits into the characters. And I guess like where people get upset about it is when it feels forced. And I feel like forced is the wrong word. It's when it comes out of nowhere. And with Daredevil and then with X-Men 97, the political commentary never came out of nowhere. It was embedded and it was just a part of every single episode, every line. And it feels like we're on a track to where like this is definitely a more cohesive writing room than maybe we've seen before. And this is just the creative vision overall by everybody seems to be on the same page.
This is the first show. This is the first one since that giant, crazy Hollywood Reporter article. Once again, my life being very different 2 years ago when that comes out. That Variety piece coming out within 2-3 days of each other about they're having freaking creative meetings in the middle of freaking Palm Springs to be like, yo, let's figure out what the heck's going on here, right? Like, absolutely. And it shows in the unified vision and in the strength they feel in the show that this is the only one of these things where season 2 was announced immediately.
Right.
Like they filming it right now in New York. You can go on Twitter and find the pictures if you want.
Boy,
Right.
candy.
Yeah, like and I would say, please, if you want any of this stuff to remain a secret for you, you may want to stay away from any images because when they broke that burnt all returning story, it was because I'm sure someone had gotten pictures of him.
Sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's really it, but it's funny because guess what? I've seen a little bit more of this than maybe you guys have, and the political commentary is not stopping. The train is
There you
not
go.
stopping.
All right.
It ain't stopping. Next
Love
week
it.
is next week's my best favorite episode is Brandon's least favorite episode. I'll leave it at that. But
Okay.
I think that's why there's 2 episodes.
Indifference. I love it. I love it. Going into my biggest takeaway, and it is just that. It's kind of the episode format of this season so far. And we talked about kind of the Frankensteining of it a little bit, creative editing, having so much of it filmed before the rebuild of everything and how they're making it work. And I think that it's so interesting. Like we get that first episode, which is reportedly an episode that they added in essentially, almost like a prologue to what they thought the season was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing action scene right off the top. One of the better hallway fights we've seen from the show. And then we move into the second episode where it's kind of just rebounding off of that, the 1 year later of it all. And then we get that action scene there at the end where, Matt snaps back. And then 2 straight weeks, no action scene. Last week was the courtroom drama. So that's where you kind of get your genre, so to speak. In this one, no action scene at all, but it's more just conversation, character building. Like I said earlier, getting plots caught up to where we're going next week. And it just makes me think with the 2 episodes next week, action packed. Like I feel like we're heading into a spot where they're backloading a lot of what people think of when they think of Daredevil with the fights and the action and all that. And it shows in the last scene of the episode where not only do we get Daredevil coming back, now here's Muse doing some crazy shit. Like it's gonna be I really feel, Aaron, you said it right off the top. This is such a turnstile episode to where we're moving into the next chapter of this show. And I'm so excited for the confidence they had to take their time, build what they needed to build, and get prime the audience for what is coming, whatever that might be. And I just think that this episode, while it's definitely not my favorite of the 4 so far, it serves such a great purpose in the overall season narrative so far. And I'm really excited to see where everything goes from that. Everything from the White Tiger niece, you know what I mean? Like I read something today from the Fandom Boys. They said that I guess the director had mentioned initially the amulet was going to like radiate or show some sign of recognition when the niece got close because the amulet chooses you line that we got last week. And they didn't put that in there. And I felt like it kept the emotion of what that scene was and just pissed off Niece coming in hot, by the way. And just all of that was so organic and special in that moment. And they didn't distract it with a glowing eyes amulet or whatever. And if you know, you know, if you don't, it's going to be something that they've now planted and they can move forward with without jumping the shark on it. And there was a lot of stuff like that. The BB Ulrich stuff, the therapy situation. Like there was so much going on in this episode, but I think it all served a downfield purpose. Movies or sports. This felt like a whole episode of 5-yard run, 7-yard in, first down, 5-yard run, 7-yard in, first down. Like they were just moving the ball down the field and then bang, haymaker right over the top with the Bernthal Charlie Cox scene.
Yeah, we have a whole sequence of like them going out to this port and being like, we need to build this up. It's like all this, like this, like whole. There's so many things happening this episode. Like I'm glad you mentioned that because that was a huge thing. Just like watching it, where I agree, it was like always like short plays, short things. The fact that it's kind of a critique, but the fact that we got the Muse set up right in that final thing, it's like, what is even happening? That character seems we have no idea. I definitely expected Muse to be more in this season so far based on like the marketing and like how it was teased. So I'm really curious to see how he then now comes into play going forward.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see if they can make it work because he's just not connected to anything so far. So I'm excited to see where that plays in. And those are our 4 downs, our biggest takeaways. Let's move into top plays.
Nailed it. Finally got it.
I'm pretty pumped about it. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's not as good as the X-Men one. It never could be. But we're here. Top plays. Aaron, what were your favorite moments, little lines, little action scenes, whatever it might be? What were your favorite top plays from this episode?
I mean, hearing Frank Castle call that man red again.
Oh, come on.
Come
Come
on.
on, dude.
It's really nice. As a
It
person,
is.
it is a recurring bit on Face Hero that I am the most how you say light watcher of things of
Okay.
all of us. I do not do a whole lot of compound fracture viewing in our household. That's not where we get down, at least not me. It is nice. And it's funny. I think it's a testament to how strong these characters are. That in like moments they get pretty intense, they get pretty crazy over there on the old Netflix Marvel shows. I do have such an affection for her. Charlie Cox is so charming,
Mm-hmm.
so
So,
charming.
so sexy.
And it's so funny to me that that's not a part of the calculus when people talk about this character in this show. They don't talk about like, yo, Deborah Wool, Eldon, and freaking Charlie Cox are delightful to
Mhm.
see in any interaction, talking about anything around the table,
Yep.
preferably. That is a big selling point, and I feel like we just hunt that away because everybody's like, "Oh, it's the one for adults," And
Hmm.
same thing with Bertha, we miss out on like him having a lot of emotional range, and like I joked with Arya after this episode ended. I'm like, we now just witnessed both sides of the male loneliness epidemic. One of them is freaking Frank Castle. One of them is Wilson Fisk. Now, inside you lives two wolves, kind of vibes with them in this episode. So that was just fun for me. I like that episode, that moment a lot from this episode.
Dude, when he calls him right, it's
So
serotonin.
good.
Hits. And I think back to that rooftop episode every time when he's doing that classic Punisher Spider-Man animated series from the 90s, walk across something, as he's talking. Well, that's the thing, Red, and it's this, that, the other. It's just so great. I'm so glad they did it as much as they did too. It was like 12 times he called him Red.
So good.
David, your top place.
Yeah, the first one I had was just the Atom reveal. That was so dark. I was like, oh dear. I knew it was gonna be bad. I think it's gonna be quite that bad, having him locked up for however long. Like, and he's got this giant beard, hair. He's like, please, Mr. Fisk, Mayor Fisk. And like, how freaking twisted. He sits there and like pours wine and has this like giant plate of pasta and just like for no other reason wants to just like be in his presence, just kind of remind him like almost like I own you, like you are mine. You are nothing now. You are just my I don't know, pet or like kind of weird reminder trophy thing. Super dark, like genuinely.
The pasta dish might be my favorite moment in all of Daredevil so far. Seriously, because
Mm.
when we think of Wilson Fisk eating, what do we think of him eating?
The omelet.
The omelet. His nice, clean,
Yeah.
2 eggs, green onion omelet. Nice and clean, fresh start to your day. And that is always what we see Wilson Fisk. Almost like trying to put on airs that he is this well put together, clean, healthy guy. But when he wants to get a little gluttonous and wants to sit next to a guy he's torturing, I want pasta and Italian sausage. Not just one, not just four Italian sausages on top of that pasta, loading up with carbs, a very heavy dish. I think like that's definitely something. Like the omelet versus the pasta dish, those are the two wolves of Wilson Fisk a little bit. And I was shocked when they lifted that thing up and it was that big pasta dish because that's just it's so iconic, the omelet, and they went completely opposite with a really heavy meal there. I thought that was a really cool moment for
Yeah.
sure.
Uh
I have a top play,
mhm.
really quick. Without a doubt the hardest I've laughed at a Marvel Studios show in a really long time is when they go from the little kids singing "We Built This City" and the worst rendition of the song I've ever heard, and then he steps into that fucking Latvian conference and they're singing the exact same song. I laughed so hard, dude. It was hysterical how just miserable Wilson Fisk was hearing that song again, man. I thought that was genius.
Yeah, it was great how he like stands up and claps and is like, "Oh no, we're good.
No,
So
no, that's fine.
talented. Like they're incredible." And like walks out of the room like, "Oh, that was I love seeing him do the like silly political figure event stuff." And that's like
Hmm.
the lady's like, "Yeah, this is the job, man. Like you got to do this." It's great.
Aaron, do you have any more top plays you want to shout out?
Uh man,
Or have we covered it all?
I forgot about the freaking the choir. That was funny. Like we popped apart for that in our house. We were like
Mhm.
laughing real hard. I'm
That was
like,
good.
that is the job, baby. That's what you signed up for. Like the days of throwing people on the fences are over. You got to sit
Yeah.
here and let these children sing Jefferson Starship badly. That's your life now. Uh
That's just the life of a politician. I do I do have one more interesting note I noticed. The Muse art across the city. And he's even got a little tag, not subtle at all. But that Fisk uh mural that he has with like him taking the mask off, like the two sides of Fisk thing. I think
Yeah.
that's obviously it's in trailers, it's everywhere. That's an awesome mural to kind of show what this character might be. But the other two that they have with the Punisher logo that says triggered right across the top, and then the new White Wolf one that says Vigilante Justice on it. And of course, it's a spin on Vigilante Justice because it's justice for this vigilante. That seems a little like less deep than the Fisk one taken off, like especially the Punisher one that just says triggered right across the top. I'm like, that seems like it's like
Yeah.
an AI generated thing, and the other one's like really deep and has all this meaning. Where's Muse artistically is my question. You know what I mean? Like, is maybe he's doing like a 30 days in a row thing. Like he's got to get something up every day. So the triggered one just made sense that day. Like I would love to see the artist that is Muse explain the triggered one in like this deep Banksy style way. Like you see, bro, if you see it's a Punisher logo, right? But it says triggered right across the top, and the trigger is a gun. And it's just it was silly to me that he has like this very obvious mural up there.
One thing in this episode, we didn't get the BB moment like that was mentioned in episode 3. Like we
I
got the
mean,
BB report one time. At the end of episode 3, Fisk is like, "Hey, Dan, like bring me your friend."
oh yeah.
We didn't get that. So that was
BB was a
something.
part of this though. She blew up that story.
Well, she was that we got the I love that, but that was a
That
top
was
play.
sick.
That's a great way of bringing that back. Like I love them like going out and getting fucked up and then like how that then plays into the story and like him having to admit it and like I that character is really good so far. The Daniel character, like
Yes.
he just like he just really wants to like he wants to have a good time, have fun, have friends. He wants everything, right? Like he wants Wilson Fisk to be like the man, but he seems good-hearted. So it's like this weird twist. He's not inherently like this bad guy. He just kind of really looks up to this political figure while not necessarily having a bad bone in his body, and like admits to fault and all this stuff. And it seems too that Kingpin has a soft spot for him, clearly, right? Or in his way, soft spot meaning like he's a utility, right? He
Yep.
can be used.
I had a lot to drink, if I'm honest, a little bit of ketamine. You don't have to say that. You just don't have to say that. It's great.
Somebody doesn't work with Gen Zers. They just blurt things like that sometimes where you're just
Dude, like that's not like a casual thing you say to your boss, especially when your boss is the mayor.
Yeah.
Like
the
go get
workplace
drunk, have
environment.
fun, little K-hole. Are you kidding me? Like it's crazy.
And you just screwed him, right? Like he has been having such I feel like he's
Yeah,
been
what
having such like great press. Like it's a huge development that now it's like, oh, there's this whole, anti-union and that was so interesting to me. That little corner of this show and maybe it goes into season 2 as well. I'm really excited to see like that should be kind of boring, but it's not at all. I really like to see like the whole mayor stuff with Daniel and the other lady that's like, yeah, I've been here before both of you and I'll be here after. Like I love that.
she's great too.
Hmm.
She's really great too. Like managing everything. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Daredevil episode 4. Aaron, I got a question for you. I want to watch some new shows. I want to watch some new TV, but man, I just don't have the money. I don't have the finances to pay for it. Tell me, what can I do to learn about new shows that are affordable?
Well, we got something just for you, Matt. We got Free Space, the free streaming TV podcast. We cover all of your favorite free streamers and some fancy pants recs for those of you millionaires out there.
Sure,
Those of you who
sure.
still got you're rolling in that dark money. We got you there too. So we're covering Pluto TV, Tubi, Crackle, freaking Roku channel, Canopy, which I highly recommend. That works on your library card. That has a really good selection. Even like PBS stuff. And if
Mhm.
you want something to watch with your family on the weekends, you can watch you. There are things to watch that you don't have to pay any money for. I don't know how many times in the olden days of the podcast in Face Hero, people would be like, I don't have money for Disney Plus. I don't know what I'm gonna do. And I'm like, well, there's an entire other streaming world out there for you. And that's at How to Watch Free TV on Instagram and on YouTube. We launched the YouTube channel, I think like yesterday, the day before. And our newsletter, which I will send recs that are not in some of the videos we make, is how to watch free.tv. You can sign up for the newsletter, kick us a couple dollars, and I can say this on your guys' show first. We're doing a physical free streaming guide. Little small
Oh,
TV guide that you can have at your house for about I think about we're landing around $8 or so. And we got at least 12 or not even 12, it's like 18 recs. We got like a little long form writing in there. If you ever wondered what weird workplace comedy or just the best in like weird trash TV that you can watch for free. You're trying to watch the fifth American sport, which is The Bachelorette, you with your family and start that up. You can do that for free. So we got it all over in free space. How to watch free TV, and of course over at Phase Hero, I'm sure Brandon's gonna have me talking about some of that stuff too. Jenna's gonna be a guest really early on. I'm gonna work all the crew through here. Love to have you guys on if there's anything you want. And yeah, if you want, if you've ever thought like I don't know how to do this on a free, like on a free scale where we don't have the money to pay for all these streaming services. You can really cobble together a lot of fun evenings at the house with you and your family and you and your friends for not a lot of money if you know where to look. And we would love to set that up for you and have you have something physical so you can like look at it and hang out with people and be like, oh, this looks good and cross it off or like, right, like, okay, this one was great and have comments and stuff. So we're building a little something over on Free Space.
love it, love it. Make sure to check out Free Space. Launches tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
We're
Um,
gonna do a little mini episode tomorrow because we have a giant guest planned for the first episode, and over. Funny enough, not that doesn't work that far away from where they make Daredevil Born Again. So
Mm.
there you
got
go.
them coming through to come physically film our episode. So we'll do a little mini Rex tomorrow, and then we get into the hard stuff next week.
Make sure to check out Free Space. Make sure to follow How to Watch Free TV. Aaron, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll have to have you back on sometime. And, it's just more Daredevil, guys. We're in a good spot.
That's my secret red. I'm always angry.
Fuck yeah. And then Foggy's secret is that he's always drunk. That's a fun
Oh
one.
no.
Wow.
No, he's dead.
Yeah, I
Shit.
was gonna say not anymore.
Ladies and gentlemen, for Aaron and David, I'm Matt. Until then, we'll see you next time.